Okay, here we go. Distance. You've already worked a bit with the handouts in class, and we looked at distance formula. So I'm just going to review this. We are going to talk about how do you find the distance between 2 points. So let's take 2 points, point A and point B. We're going to call point A x1 and y1. And we're going to call point B x2 and y2. So question is, well, first question, what do this 1 and these 2 mean? Yeah, thank you for contributing, Katie. All right, that means these little 1s and 2s. We talked about this in class and your video. On the worksheet that I have that accompanies this video, there is a number and asks you to answer this question. So go ahead and pause the video and get that answered. Now, here's my point x1, y1, and here's my point x2, y2. And I want to know the distance between here and here. So how can we figure it out? Well, one way we can do it is using that Pythagorean theorem we were talking about. So I just drew my x1, y1 and my x2, y2 again. Drew that line between them. And I want to know this distance. That distance is going to be the same as the hypotenuse of the triangle, as if I dropped a line down and I drew a line over and I finished out this right triangle. See, there's the right angle. Now the distance for this leg of the triangle is going to be going from the biggest y, which is y2, down to the smaller y, which is y1. So the distance is y2 minus y1. We also can call this a. Now to find my distance for along here, we've got the distance from our biggest x over here, there's x2, back to our first x, which is our x1. So the distance down here would be the difference between x2 and x1, and we can call that b. So here's the second question I want you to answer on your sheet. Why can we say a is y2 minus y1, and why can we say that b is x2 minus x1? So go ahead and pause the video and think about that. Write down your answer. Okay, so by the Pythagorean theorem, we know that c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And then we can take the, thank you, sweetheart, then we can take the square root of both sides. Now, why can we do that? Remember, because if you do something to one side of an equality, remember there's our equal sign, then you have to do the same thing to the other side of the equality. So when I do that, if I take the square root of c squared, remember that's c. And if I take the square root of a squared plus b squared, well, that's just the square root of a squared plus b squared, because I don't know that side yet. So here's another next question, third question on your handout I want you to look at. What is an equality? Hint, I just told you. If you don't remember, rewind the video. Now, if we've said that a is y2 minus y1 and b is x2 minus x1, then what I can do is instead of writing a squared, I can just write this whole thing for a, and I can write y2 minus y1, and then I'm going to square it. I'm going to do the same thing for b. Instead of writing b, I'm going to write x2 minus x1, and I'm going to square it. Now remember, and you can rewind the video, and you'll see that c was the same as d, the same length. We're just calling c as the hypotenuse and d is the distance. So if I replace this c with a d, we get d is equal to y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. Whoa, that's the distance formula. Dude, I thought we were using the Pythagorean theorem. That's right. The Pythagorean theorem is the same as the distance formula, just like Superman, or Super Pythagorean, and Clark Kent. And I can't think of a geeky name for the distance formula. So anyways, they're the same thing, they're just in a different form. Pythagorean theorem, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Distance formula, d equals x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So which one do we use? Well, just like Superman, it depends on the situation. So let's try. Here's a problem. Find the distance between 3, 8 and 2, 4. What formula? Well, we're given 2 points, so we're going to use the distance formula. So if we call 3, 8 x1 and y1, and we call 2, 4 x2 and y2, we write our formula. We put our values in. x2 is the 2. X1 is the 3, so 2 minus 3. Y2 is 4, and y1 is 8, so 4 minus 8. I'm going to follow my order of operations, so I have to do everything inside the parentheses first. So that makes -1, and I'm going to square it. And this here makes -4, and I'm going to square it. I don't have to worry about a negative sign under the square root, because when I square 1 times 1, that equals 1. When I square -4 times -4, well, that equals 16. So I got to add them together. So now I know that my distance is going to be the square root of 17. And if I round, and at this point you would either estimate or round depending on what the question asks you. When I round, I get my distance is equal to 4.1. So here's one for you to try. Pause the video and give it a whirl. Now, what if you have a problem like something like this? A triangle has a leg with length 3 centimeters. The other leg is 5 centimeters. What's the length of a hypotenuse? Round to the nearest tenth. Now, it's talking about a right triangle. How do I know that? Well, it was talking about a hypotenuse. Right triangles are the ones that have the hypotenuse. So we're going to use Pythagorean theorem. How do we use it? Draw a picture. There's our A, our B, and our C. Label the picture. Well, I'm going to just randomly, I'm going to call A 3. And I'm going to call B 5. I could have done it either way, but the way I drew my picture, this side was longer, so I decided to write 5 there. And then we're going to write the formula. And we are going to, C is equal to square root of A squared plus B squared. Now I'm going to fill in my numbers. Well, A is 3, so I'm going to put A right here and square it. B is 5, I'm going to put 5 right here and square it. So C is the square root of 9 plus 25, or square root of 34. And when I put that in my calculator and I round it, I'm going to get 5.8. Remember, always look at the problem to know how far you need to round or if you need to estimate. Now, last little bit here. Midpoint. So what if Mrs. Graham was so mean to, and yes, she is this mean. What if I was so mean to say, I don't just want to know how far these 2 points are from each other. I want to know what is the coordinates, or what are the coordinates for the point that's right smack dab in the middle. So to find this, the x component of this guy right here is going to be halfway between my x1 and my x2. So to find that halfway point, I add my x1 and x2 together and I divide by 2. All right, now if I want to find my y component, it's going to be halfway between my big Y and my little y. So I'm going to add my y's together and divide by 2. This gives me halfway. So I can find the midpoint at the point x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Introducing the midpoint formula. Dun, dun, dun. So let's go ahead and do an example real quick. What are the coordinates of the midpoint of the following line segments? So let's look at this guy. Let's say I have a line segment between -3, 2 and 7, -2. Now you don't have to draw it out, but I went ahead and I drew it out anyways just so that I could see what I was doing. Here's my -3, 2. Here's my 7, -2. My midpoint formula, M is here for midpoint, is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then my y is y1 plus y2 over 2. So my M is -3. There's my x1 plus 7, which is my m2, divided by 2. And then I've got my y's, which is 2 plus a -2 over 2. So my midpoint is 4/2, 0, or simplified, 2, 0. All right. You go ahead and try these 3. Pause the video. Put them on. This is all on your worksheet that I have for you. Now, challenge problem. What is the perimeter of the square ABCD? So here's ABCD. This is the square. I give you 3 hints. 1, find the coordinates of A, B, C, and D. Now, A, B, C, and D, they're all halfway in between these corners of the outer square. Hint 2, you can try dividing the square into triangles and maybe use the Pythagorean theorem. Or maybe you only want to use the distance formula. Or maybe you want to use both. So think about that a bit. Hint 3, remember the perimeter is equal to the lengths of all the sides added up. So good luck on that. At the end of your worksheet, I want you to write a summary of what you're still having questions on. And that's it for now. Oh, don't forget to check out the midpoint wrap video and the distance formula wrap and the Pythagorean theorem wrap. Those are way cool. I definitely show my geeky side there. All right, we'll see you later.